The spoon slipped from my hand and clattered into the sink. The water kept running. I stood there, elbows damp, the scent of lemon dish soap rising in curls. From the hallway, their voices blurred together until one sentence cut through like a blade. She's just a bit of a burden these days. Charlene. My daughter. I stared at the pale tile backsplash. There was a chip in the corner. She always said she'd replace it. A burden. I pressed my palm against the edge of the sink. The cool porcelain bit back. A word like that doesn't echo. It sinks. She didn't shout it. She didn't mean for me to hear. That made it worse. It meant she believed it. Not in anger, but in certainty. I turned off the faucet. The silence afterward was heavier than the running water. Heavier than the plate I didn't finish washing. I walked to the window. Outside, the wind caught the wind chimey, a dull clink against rusted tin. The same sound from the first spring. We moved into the farm. He had hung it himself, just beside the porch swing. 45 years ago. When our hands still worked the soil. When my name meant something. A burden. That word doesn't just describe a weight. It becomes one. I leaned my forehead against the glass. It was cold. Not from the weather, but from what I now knew. They were making plans. Without me. About me. That's the moment I understood. Not that they didn't need me anymore, but that they no longer saw me as someone to need. The coffee mug on the table had gone cold. I didn't remember pouring it. There are two kinds of silence. The one you choose. And the one that chooses you. She didn't lock the door. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her words did it for her. She's just a burden. And in that moment, I decided I would not be. Not quietly. Not completely. Not yet. Because I may no longer set the table. But I still have the right to decide who gets to sit at it. If your own child called you a burden, would you forgive? Or would you begin again on your own terms? The house used to smell like apples and wood smoke. Now, it smells like lavender detergent and someone else's routine. Charlene keeps the windows closed. Says the pollen makes the kids sneeze. I miss the wind. Even when it howled. Even when it blew leaves through the porch cracks. In our old farmhouse, we'd stuff towels at the windowsills. Just to keep the drafts from slicing through. And we'd laugh, Henry and I, because the cold always found a way in, no matter how hard we tried. But it was our cold. It belonged to us. Here, everything belongs to someone else. The silence. The space. Even the clock on the wall ticks in a language I don't quite recognize. I have a blanket. Wool, thick, a bit scratchy. Smells faintly of cedar and earth. It used to drape over Henry's lap every autumn evening. Now it stays folded at the foot of my bed. Unwelcome in this guest room that used to be a craft space. Charlene says it clashes with the new color scheme. As if memories need matching paint. I keep it anyway. Folded just the way he decreases soft from use. It's the one thing in this room that still feels warm before I touch it. There's a maple leaf pressed between the pages of my journal. I found it the week Henry passed. It had landed near the porch swing. Deep red. Still perfect. I remember thinking, even in death, some things fall with grace. I don't write as much now. Not because I've run out of things to say, but because no one listens. Not even the page. Each morning, I wait. Not for anything in particular. Just for the house to settle. For the sound of car doors slamming. Backpack zipping. And then, I move. Boil water. Pour tea into my chipped ceramic mug. Charlene keeps offering to replace it. Says there's a whole cabinet full of better ones. But better is not the same as mine. I remember the roadside fair where we bought it. Henry picked two, one blue, one green. He gave me the green one with a crooked handle. It has character, he said. It still does. Now, it sits among novelty mugs that say, Best Mom, and Tired but Caffeinated. I don't think anyone's ever used those. But mine still holds heat. And memory, even if the hands that made it are long gone, even if the woman who drinks from it is no longer asked how she takes her tea. There's a chair by the front window. It used to be mine. It used to face the orchard. Now, it faces the wall. Charlene says the sun fades the fabric. But I think it's because she doesn't like how I sit there too long. Too still. Like a painting that makes her uncomfortable. I tried moving it back once. Just a few inches. Enough to catch the morning light on my lap. The next day, it was angled away again. No one said anything. But the message was there. They don't remove me. They rotate me out of view. There's a box of old recipes under my bed. Faded index cards, smudged with vanilla and butter. Charlene asked if she could digitize them. I said no. She said she'd just take a few. I haven't seen them since. Last Sunday, they made pie. Store-bought crust. No spice in the filling. It tasted like absence. No one asked why I didn't eat much. They just assumed I didn't have the appetite. But I do. I crave taste. I crave tradition. I crave my own hands in the making. Not because I need to be useful, but because I need to be part. This isn't about the food, or the chair, or the mug. It's about the quiet places where I used to belong. Being covered over, one by one, with newer things. They say, "We want you here, Mom." But here has no room left. For me, I keep a small drawer in the kitchen. It used to hold measuring spoons, birthday candles, a pencil I loved. Now it holds batteries, and a lint roller, and a charger no one uses. It used to hum with memory. Now it buzzes with function. I open it sometimes just to remind myself what forgetting looks like. Because that's what this is. Not anger. Not rejection. Just the slow forgetting of what I used to mean. And the hardest part isn't being forgotten. It's being allowed to stay. As long as I'm quiet. As long as I don't take up too much space. As long as I stay useful, but not in the way. And I wonder how many women have mastered the art of disappearing with grace. In the hallway closet, there's a box labeled seasonal decor. It used to be mine. Inside are hand-stitched napkins, a fall wreath made of dried orange peels, and a ceramic turkey Henry painted with the grandkids. I asked Charlene last November if we were using it for Thanksgiving. She smiled, almost too kindly. "Oh, we're going minimalist this year, Mom. Less clutter." Clutter. That's what memory becomes, when it no longer fits their design. That night, I went to the closet, opened the box, and touched every single thing. Not to rearrange. Not to rescue. Just to remember what full felt like. The napkins still held the scent of cinnamon. The ceramic turkey had a chip near the beak, from when Lily dropped it and cried. Until I told her he looked better that way. They don't remember that. But I do. The next morning, the box was taped shut. Charlene never mentioned it. And I didn't ask. I've stopped asking. Stopped offering. Stopped suggesting. Because each time I do, they smile. Just a little too long. That's the smile people give when they're trying to make you feel included in something you no longer own. In the living room, they hung a new photo collage. Canvas wrapped, sleek. It has all of them. Charlene, her husband, the kids, even the dog. I stood there for a while, tracing each face with my eyes. There was a space in the corner. A square of bare wall. Just wide enough for an old frame. My frame. The one they said didn't match. I wanted to ask where it went. But something in me stayed quiet. Because I already knew. Not where it was, but what it meant. And maybe that's what growing older really is. Not forgetting, but watching as others choose to forget. For you, I returned to my room. sat on the edge of the bed, held the wool blanket in my lap, like a child holds the last piece of something warm. And I whispered aloud, to no one and everyone, I'm still here. The words barely filled the room, but they filled me. If your memories no longer fit their home, do you make yourself smaller? Or do you build a place where they still belong? It started with the invitation. That never came. Lily's birthday was on a Saturday. I knew, because I had written it. In pen, not pencil. On the little floral calendar by my bed. The numbers were circled in red. A small heart beside her name. I had planned to make the apple cake. The one with brown sugar on top. The one she used to ask for every fall. She used to call it Grandma's crunchy sky. Said it tasted like October. But the kitchen was already full. When I came downstairs. Cupcakes in a plastic container. Store-bought. I stood at the doorway for a moment, watching Charlene frost them with pink icing. Her back was to me. She didn't turn around. On the counter were party bags. Sealed. Each with a printed tag, from Lily's family. I wasn't in the photo. No apron with my name. No room at the table for hands that once stirred. Once held. I cleared my throat gently. Do you want me to help? Charlene finally looked up. Oh, no need, Mom, we've got it. We. I stood there in my own daughter's kitchen. And wondered who we was. She used to call me from the grocery store. To ask about cinnamon measurements. Now, she doesn't ask. Now, she orders. Later that afternoon. I stayed in my room. I wasn't told to. But no one knocked either. I heard the giggles. The camera shutter. The rustle of wrapping paper. The songs. They sang Happy Birthday. With 2 guitars and a Bluetooth speaker. I waited for someone to come get me. They didn't. Through the vent, I heard Lily ask, Is Grandma coming? And Charlene replied, She's resting, sweetheart. She gets tired, remember? I wasn't tired. I was dressed. I had even put on the necklace Henry gave me, our last Christmas together. A deep green stone. He said it reminded him of the orchard leaves. Just before harvest. But no one asked. No one checked. The party ended. The house fell quiet. I walked down to clean up. The dining table was a mess of crumbs and juice boxes. Charlene said, Oh, you don't have to, Mom. But she didn't stop me. I picked up each paper plate like it was a story I missed. The pink frosting on the napkins was the same color I used on Lily's 5th birthday cake. Back when I still had a place. At the table. Now, I clean it. After the guests are gone. And the only candles I touch are the ones I throw away. The next day, the chairs on the patio were rearranged. Not by accident. There were 4 lined neatly in a row. I used to sit in the 5th. The wicker one with the cushion that sinks too low. They moved it to the garage. Said it was falling apart. So I stood there, holding my cup of tea, looking at the row of 4. It's a strange thing. Watching the space you used to occupy vanish without a word. They didn't say I couldn't sit. They just made it less likely. At lunch, I waited until everyone had filled their plates. Waited to be invited. Charlene waved a hand. Go ahead, Mom. There's plenty. Plenty. But no place set. I took a plate from the counter and sat on the far stool. The one without a cushion. I ate slowly. Quietly. While they talked about school drop-offs and utility bills. No one asked me anything. I nodded. Smiled where I could. Tried not to interrupt. It reminded me of the break room at the hospital. Back when I was new. And no one knew my name yet. Except this time. They did. At one point, Lily spilled water. A quick splash across the table. I moved to grab a towel. But Charlene was faster. She whispered something to her husband. He glanced at me. And then they both smiled. Like I was a child. Trying to be helpful. but fragile. "Don't worry, Mom," she said. "We've got it." There it was again. We. I've begun to hate that word. Not because I'm not part of it, but because they keep using it. Like a rope, gently tied around my wrists. Later that night, I found the birthday candles in the trash. Unused. They were the little rose-colored ones I had saved. Shaped like flowers. Soft wax. Bought them last year, when I thought I'd still be baking. I picked one out of the bin, rinsed it under warm water, held it in my hand, until it softened slightly. I didn't cry. I just stood there in the kitchen, while the dishwasher hummed behind me, like it belonged more than I did. And I wondered, when did I stop being part of the plan, and start becoming a footnote in their schedule? There's a new photo on the mantel. Glossy. Canvas wrapped. Everyone's smiling. I wasn't there when it was taken. Charlene said it was just a quick snapshot. Nothing formal. But someone had time to print it, stretch it, frame it, hang it, like it had always belonged. It replaced the old frame, the one with Henry and me, on the porch swing, holding baby Lily in a knitted blanket. I made in a snowstorm. 30 winters ago. That frame used to sit beside the clock. Now, the clock stands alone, ticking forward, like nothing was ever there beside it. The old photo didn't break. It didn't fall. It just vanished. I found it later, in the bottom drawer, with extension cords and expired coupons. The glass was dusty, the wood chipped at the corner. I ran my thumb across the image. Henry's eyes were still laughing. My younger face leaned into his shoulder. Lily's hands were wrapped around one of his fingers. No part of it felt disposable. But that's where they put it. She didn't explain. Didn't need to. It's not that I'm gone. I'm just archived. Like the wallpaper in the pantry. Like the recipe box she labeled Mom's Things, but never opened again. I stood in front of the mantel too long, studying the new smiles, counting who made the cut. In the corner, next to the fireplace, was a nail, an empty one. I traced it with my finger. The metal was warm from the sun, but the space it left behind, cold. They walked past me, back and forth, laughing, carrying laundry, talking about movie nights and grocery lists. No one asked what I was looking at. No one noticed. My hand resting where memory used to live. And maybe that's what hurts most. Not the missing photo. Not even the silence. But the fact that I could disappear from the wall, and the room would carry on. Exactly the same. That evening, I went back to my room, lit the small lamp on the nightstand, pulled out the crocheted shawl from the cedar chest. The one Henry's mother made for our 25th anniversary. The yarn had faded in places, but the scent remained. Faint cedar. And something older. Like care. Preserved in stitches. I draped it over my shoulders. And for a moment, I let myself believe. The silence meant peace. Not absence. But I knew better. I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. Just replaced. Quietly. And if no one asks where you've gone, were you ever really there at all? It started with a piece of mail. That wasn't meant for me. A thin white envelope. No return address. Just my name, Elaine Carter, typed. But slightly off-center. It was sitting on the hallway table, beside a stack of magazines. Almost like it had been forgotten. I picked it up. The paper was smooth. Too new. Not like the bills or postcards that usually came with rounded corners and fingerprints. Inside, a brochure from a property management firm. Thinking of selling rural land in Iowa? It said, "We specialize in legacy transitions." I stood still for a long time. No one else gets mail like that. Not here. Not unless they've been researching. My heart didn't race. It just stopped moving forward. At lunch, I asked Charlene casually, "Did someone come by the house yesterday?" She looked up from her salad. "Maybe. I don't know." "Why?" "There was something in the mail. A brochure. About land." Her fork paused. Just for a second. Then she smiled. "Oh, those things come all the time. Junk mail. They send them to everyone who owns anything." Anything. Like my name was a line on a spreadsheet. I nodded. Didn't press. Didn't show her the envelope. That night, I pulled out the old file box. From the back of my closet. The one with Henry's handwriting still on the tabs. Deed, Eastfield. County Survey, 1985. Well rights. Carter Farm. I ran my hand over the papers. Like I was smoothing down the years. In the back of the box was a folded document, thicker than the rest. A draft. Prepared but never signed. Transfer of partial rights to family trust. I remembered it. We'd spoken about it briefly. After Henry's last hospital stay. He had said, "We'll sign it when we're ready." We never were. The signature line was still blank. Mine. His. Untouched. Outside the window, a wind chime stirred. The one I brought from the farmhouse. It made a hollow, tin-like sound. One note repeating. I held the unsigned document in my lap. Felt the weight of it. Not just the paper, but the silence around it. They didn't ask. They didn't tell. They just assumed. I wouldn't look. Wouldn't understand. But I do. And what I understand is this. You don't erase someone by shouting. You erase them by signing for them while they're still in the room. The next morning, Charlene was on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice was low, too measured for casual talk. She didn't see me walk in. "I'm sure she won't push back," she said. "Legally, it's still under her name, but..." Then she turned and smiled. "Oh, hi, Mom." Her voice rose half a step. A practiced shift. I didn't ask. I just poured my tea. The silence that followed was louder than the call. Later that afternoon, I opened the junk drawer, looking for a pen, and found a set of documents, folded inside a manila envelope. Unmarked, but not forgotten. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Inside were recent emails. Printed. Outlines of trust structures. Names of real estate attorneys. Even a blank signature page. Already marked with my initials. My initials. Scanned. Copied. I stared at them for a long time. Those 3 letters. E.M.C. Not written in my hand. Too round. Too smooth. The kind of initials made by someone trying to make it look natural. I pressed my fingers to the paper. Not in anger. In grief. There are betrayals that shout. And there are betrayals that come dressed in helpful fonts and polite bullet points. I tucked the envelope back where I found it. Closed the drawer. The handle was loose. It wobbled when I let go. That night, at dinner, Charlene asked me if I'd thought more about consolidating things. She used the word like it meant kindness. Like it was a gift. I'd be smart to accept. "I just don't want you to worry, Mom," she said. "Wouldn't it feel good to have everything streamlined?" Streamlined. I nodded. Because the soup was warm, and I didn't want it to cool. But inside, something turned. Something heavy. Something old. Henry once said, "The only time people rush paperwork is when it benefits them more than you." He wasn't cynical. Just precise. He read every line. Every clause. And now, his name was missing from these papers. Replaced by a digital ID. A notary in another city. I folded my napkin carefully. set it beside the bowl. And I thought, if they could sign for me once, what else were they willing to erase? Before I even left the room? The next week, Charlene started offering to manage my prescriptions. Just to simplify things. She said, I know all the apps now, it's easier if I handle the refills. I smiled, sipped my tea, didn't argue. But the bottle of heart medication had been in the same cupboard since Henry passed. I never once missed a dose. Simplify. That word again. It kept coming up lately. In the kitchen. In the accounts. In the way they rewrote how things used to be. I know this is a lot, she said one morning, placing a folder on my lap. It's just for peace of mind. There were tabs. Color-coded. Pages with my name in bold at the top. But the handwriting wasn't mine. The initials weren't Henry's. They were building a life. With my name still printed on the walls. But none of my voice. Inside the rooms. Later that afternoon, I asked if we still had the original deed. Charlene looked surprised. Her lips parted. Just enough to reveal the hesitation beneath the smile. I think it's at the bank, she said. I can check if you want. But I already knew. It was still in my file box. Behind the linen closet. Still where I left it. Still untouched. But for how long? In the mirror that night, I looked at myself. Longer than usual. Not for beauty. Not for age. For certainty. I said my name aloud. Elaine Marie Carter. Born 1944. Nurse for 37 years. Co-owner of 14.6 acres of land. With 3 surviving apple trees. And 1 unmarked well. I said it like a vow. Like something no one else was allowed to rewrite. Then I sat by the window, pulled the crocheted shawl tighter, and wrote a note in my journal. Still lucid, still legal, still mine. I didn't write it for them. I wrote it for me. For the version of me that might need to remember, someday, that I once knew the difference between suggestion and control. And for the version of them who will one day say, she agreed to everything. So much of erasure starts not with conflict, but with care, with soft voices, and gentle hands that guide you toward a signature you didn't realize would cost you your name. It rained that night, the kind of steady, whispering rain that seeps through window panes and under doors. If you're not careful. I had gone outside for the mail. A habit I hadn't broken. Even though most of the envelopes now came with her name on them. Not mine. The porch light was off. I didn't mind. The dark was familiar. The kind that once wrapped around me. On orchard nights. When Henry and I checked on the trees. Before the first frost. There was a peace in that kind of dark. Soft. Unafraid. I stepped into the chill. Just a sweater on. No umbrella. The wind was softer than it used to be. But it still carried a weight. That old wooden step creaked beneath me. The same creak I'd heard for 40 years. I opened the mailbox. Just one letter. A dental reminder for Lily. Nothing for me. Still, I lingered. The smell of wet earth. The sound of rain touching everything. It reminded me that I was alive. Not useful. Not necessary. But alive. I looked up. The gutters were overflowing. Rain dripped steadily from the corner of the roof. Like a clock that had lost its tick. When I turned back, the door was closed. Not locked. Not yet. Just firmly shut. I reached for the handle. It didn't move. Tried again. Still nothing. Then, I noticed. The deadbolt had been turned. From the inside. I knocked. Soft at first. Then, louder. No answer. I called out. Once. Twice. My voice didn't even echo. Just vanished into the sound of rain on metal. I stepped back under the porch awning, crossed my arms, waited. 5 minutes. 10. I could see the glow of the kitchen light through the narrow side window. Movement. But no one came. No footsteps. No voice calling out, "Oh, sorry, we didn't know you were there." I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just stood there, water soaking through my socks, hands tucked inside wet sleeves. The sweater clung to my arms like second skin. Heavy. Cold. I thought about the day we moved into the farmhouse. The lock had jammed, and Henry lifted me through the back window, laughing. Mud on his boots. Love in his eyes. We were always cold together, but never left outside. No one lifted me this time. No one even knew I was out there. Or worse, they did. And assumed I'd figure it out. Or fade. I sat on the wooden chair by the door. The one Charlene said was too weathered to keep. It held me anyway. The wood wet beneath me. My bones remembering warmth that no longer arrived. And for the first time, I felt it. Not sadness. Not even anger. But something colder. Something that wrapped around my chest. And whispered, "You are no longer needed here." I believed it. When Charlene finally opened the door, it was almost an hour later. "Oh, Mom," she said, voice high with guilt, disguised as surprise. "We didn't realize you were out there." Her husband stood behind her, arms crossed. Silent. I stepped inside. The warmth of the house pressed against my skin, like something unfamiliar. I didn't speak. Didn't explain why I hadn't knocked louder. Didn't mention the cold settling in my knees. Charlene offered me a towel. I took it. Not to dry myself, but to have something to hold on to. "Go rest," she said. "You should get warm." I nodded. Climbed the stairs, with clothes sticking to my back, and breath shallow in my chest. In my room, I didn't turn on the light. Just sat at the edge of the bed, and listened to the sound of the house moving without me. Drawers opened. Laughter sparked and faded. The clink of dishes. Music from the living room. The rain had stopped, but it hadn't left. It was still in my bones. I peeled off the wet sweater, laid it flat over the radiator. It dripped for hours, like something weeping, that couldn't find the strength to speak. I opened the drawer and took out my journal, the one with the green cloth cover, worn at the edges. Inside, the pages were wrinkled, smudged with notes, from years when I still believed someone might read them after I was gone. Now, I wrote only for myself, not to remember, but to anchor, to say, I am still here. I wrote the time, 8:53 p.m. And then, beneath it, they forgot I was outside. They say they didn't know, but I think they did, and they didn't think it mattered. I paused, let the pen rest, felt its weight in my palm, then added, I didn't matter. Not enough to count. Not enough to check. I closed the journal, held it against my chest, like a second heart. Henry would have opened that door, even in a storm, even if I hadn't knocked. He would have felt the wind, and known I was missing. That's what love does. It notices when you are gone, before you do. I laid back on the bed, shawl around my shoulders, eyes open in the dark. And for the first time, I didn't wonder what tomorrow might bring, because for the first time, I wasn't sure if I'd be included in it. The next morning, the house smelled like cinnamon toast, the kind Charlene makes when she wants things to feel normal. I sat at the table. She didn't mention the night before. Neither did I. There are silences that heal. And there are silences that erase. This one belonged to the second kind. I watched Lily play with her cereal, tiny fingers dragging circles in the milk. She looked up once, gave me a smile so soft. It almost broke me. I smiled back, then excused myself. Said I needed to find an old letter. Charlene didn't ask. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each step creaked. Not with age, but with memory. At the end of the hall, behind a pile of forgotten linens, was the wooden file box. Henry's. Oiled cedar. Edges worn smooth by years of hands. That never dropped a single thing. I brought it to my lap. Sat on the floor, legs crossed like I hadn't done in years. Inside, folders with handwritten labels. Ink faded, but still clear. Land survey, Eastfield. Tractor repairs, 2002. Waterline receipts, Carter Farm. My hands trembled. Not from weakness, from recognition. This was our life. Measured, filed, saved. Not for court, not for profit, but because it mattered to us. Near the back, I found it. A folded sheet, creased 4 ways, edges soft from being touched. The map, drawn by Henry's hand. He wasn't a draftsman, but he was precise. The apple rose, the well, the fence line, and at the bottom corner, in small, steady letters, Carter Land, as of August 1994. Elaine, 70%. HMC, 30%. Ours, always. I ran my finger along the names. The ink had faded into the paper, like roots disappearing into soil. No initials from Charlene. No signature from the lawyer. Just us. Still. I folded it slowly. Pressed it to my chest. The land was still mine. Not because of ink, but because I remembered what we built. And if they wouldn't say my name, then I would write it into every inch. They thought I'd forgotten. Even the quietest seed knows when to break the soil. This was the sound of my shell beginning to crack. That afternoon, I walked out to the mailbox again. The rain had left small puddles in the seams of the sidewalk. Each step made a soft sound. Not quite a splash. Not quite a sigh. I didn't go for the mail. I went for the walk. For the rhythm of it. For the time to think. Without being watched. On my way back, I saw Mr. Todd in his garden. He was bent over a row of turnips. Hat pulled low. Knees braced against the soft dirt. He straightened when he saw me. Wiped his hands on a faded cloth. Elaine Carter, he said. Like the name meant something again. We hadn't spoken in months. Not since the house changed. Not since I stopped waving. From the porch. Your lilacs still bloom, I said. He nodded. They do what they're made to. Even when no one's watching. We stood in silence for a while. Not awkward. Just still. Then I asked, do you remember that summer Henry and I dug the fence trench? He laughed. Sure do. You nearly broke his pride. With how straight you laid that line. I smiled. Let the wind carry it. He wrote everything down, I said. Henry. He saved maps. Invoices. Ownership drafts. Todd's gaze sharpened. He didn't speak. But his silence shifted. It listened. It held space. I still have them, I added. In my own hand. He nodded. Once. Like a stamp on a page. Then he said, you ever need a witness? You let me know. It was a small sentence. But it landed. Like a seed. In dry earth. I looked at his hands. Weathered. Scarred. But steady. The kind of hands that don't shake. When signing truth. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. With the weight of 3 decades. On the way home. I didn't walk fast. But I walked sure. The wind had shifted. A subtle change. But real. The kind Henry would have noticed. The kind farmers respect. When I reached the porch, I paused by the chair, ran my hand along its splintered armrest. I didn't sit. Not yet. I went inside, closed the door softly, and opened the file box. The papers were still there. And now, so was I. Not as someone waiting, but someone remembering. Someone returning. And maybe that's how it begins. Not with fury. Not with noise. But with a voice. Finding its own shape again. That night, I brewed chamomile. The scent filled the kitchen. Like something soft. And old. And mine. Charlene was upstairs. The house had settled. I carried the mug to my room. Closed the door. Sat down at the desk. I hadn't touched in months. Opened the drawer. Found my phone. Turned it on. The light glowed. Like it was seeing me. For the first time in a long while. I scrolled through the contacts. Names I hadn't called. Voices I hadn't needed. Until now. And then I saw hers. Grace Monroe. Henry's old colleague. The only one who still sent me cards. In cursive. She had been his witness once. And mine, too. In small ways that mattered. I tapped. Call. She answered on the second ring. Elaine? Just like that. Not Mom. Not Grandma. Not hi there. Just my name. As if it still meant something. Grace, I said. And the breath I didn't know I was holding finally left me. We didn't speak long. I didn't say much. But I said enough. I found the land map. The signed drafts. I haven't forgotten anything. She listened. And when she replied, her voice was low and certain. I'm here. Whenever you're ready. That night, I wrote in my journal again. No poetry. No reflection. Just facts. Called Grace. Still legal. Still aware. Still mine. Then I folded the map. And placed it in a new folder. Marked it with a label. To be decided by me. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. Like something under the soil had started to rise. No longer waiting for rain. I turned off the light. Lay down. With the shawl across my chest. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't rehearse my exit. I imagined a beginning. A quiet one. But mine. Some people find strength in storms. Others find it in stillness. Where do you begin again? When the world has stopped asking for you, but your name still echoes in the land you remember? We invite you to share your moment of quiet resistance below. Your story may help another woman find her own beginning. The folder sat on my desk. Like something waiting to exhale. To be decided by me. 4 words. Written in pen. Not pencil. I ran my thumb along the edge. The paper was smooth. But I could feel the grain of memory beneath it. It was time. Not for a fight. But for a shape. To give form. To all the things I had been. Pushed away from. Spoken over. Written out of. That morning. I sharpened a pencil. Opened a new legal pad. Wrote a heading at the top. Letter of intent, Elaine M. Carter. I didn't know all the legal language. Didn't have to. I just wrote what I remembered. What was mine. What Henry and I built. Without fanfare. Or applause. We purchased the land in 1978. I began. 14.6 acres. Paid in full. No liens. No loans. Just labor. I paused. Listened to the quiet. Made sure the walls weren't listening. Then continued. I contributed 70% of the purchase. He contributed 30%. We agreed to keep it in both names. For as long as we lived. My handwriting wasn't steady. But it was mine. The loops uneven, the lines leaning slightly uphill. But every letter carried weight. I flipped the page. Started listing memories. As proof, the northeast field was Henry's favorite. He planted the first Macintosh trees by hand. We used to walk it every September, just to check if the apples were ready by color, not by clock. I smiled, then underlined it. Color, not clock. That was who we were. We didn't rush. We noticed. At the bottom of the page, I wrote, "This is not anger. This is remembering. And memory has its own kind of legality." I put the pencil down, stretched my fingers, felt the ache in my knuckles. Age doesn't steal your strength. It just asks you to use it differently. I stacked the papers, slipped them into a new envelope, wrote the date on the flap, then slid it beneath the floorboard, behind the dresser. The loose one. The one Henry always meant to fix. I didn't hide it. I placed it. There's a difference. Because a woman who remembers where her roots are isn't hiding. She's planning. I waited 3 days before I made the call. Not out of hesitation. Out of timing. I watched their rhythms. When Charlene left to run errands. When the kids were distracted. When the house exhaled. Then I dialed Grace. Her number was still in my notebook, written in blue ink with a coffee stain. Across the top corner. It rang once. Twice. Then, "Elaine?" The same voice as before. Clear. Even. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready now." We didn't need more than that. She'd known Henry. She'd known me. Before I became someone's burden. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Come Thursday, 10 o'clock. Quiet entrance. Bring what matters." I hung up, sat still, listened to the refrigerator hum, and the soft rustle of trees outside the window. The wind had changed again. Cooler now. Sharper. That night, I laid out everything on the bed. The deed copy. The map Henry drew. My notes. The journal page with the sentence. Still lucid. Still legal. Still mine. Each piece a small declaration. Not loud, but rooted. I packed them in a cloth tote. Folded my scarf over the top. Set it by the door. As if I were preparing for a picnic. Charlene passed by later. Glanced at the bag. "Going somewhere?" "Just organizing," I said. "Some old files I want to review." She smiled. Thin. Distracted. "That's good," she said. "Better to get ahead of things." She didn't ask what files. She didn't see the label on the folder. Estate. Private. That morning, I steeped a cup of chamomile. Wrapped my scarf. Put on the coat with the inside pocket. Henry had sewn by hand. "I want you to carry yourself," he once said. "Like the land still knows your name." And I did. I left without noise. Without notice. Grace met me at the side door of the brick office with ivy on the east wall. She opened it like we were continuing a conversation we hadn't had in years, but never stopped meaning. "You look well," she said. "I feel clear," I replied. Which, at my age, is a kind of power. You don't explain. We walked into the quiet room, closed the door behind us. And just like that, my silence became paperwork. The room smelled faintly of old paper and lemon oil. Grace had always kept her office tidy, but never sterile. She laid the documents on the desk. No dramatic stack. Just 3 pages. I drafted it as we discussed. She said, "Clean. Direct. Irrevocable once filed." I nodded. Didn't ask for more. She handed me a pen. Waited. Black ink. "I left room," she said, "for a letter to accompany the transfer. In your words. Not legal ones." I paused. Looked down at the space she left blank. Then wrote, This land was built by hands that bled and loved. It is not to be transferred by convenience, but by conviction. Let what we planted remain, not as inheritance, but as intention. I signed my name. Firm, not fast. Elaine M. Carter. No initials. No digital stamp. No, on behalf of. Just me. Grace notarized in silence. Slid her seal into place. Like the final stitch in a seam. That would not come undone. I watched her hands move. Steady as always. Hands that had once carried her mother. Through probate. Through grief. Through the slow bureaucracy of goodbye. When she finished, she looked up. Do you want me to file it this week? Yes, I said. And send a copy to me. Unmarked. Unexplained. Just real. She nodded. I placed the folder back in my bag. Pressed my hand to its side. As if checking for a pulse. It was there. Faint, but alive. On the way out, I passed the large window that overlooked the courthouse garden. Yellow leaves had begun to fall. Soft and slow, like they knew where they were going. I stood there for a minute. Not waiting. Just claiming time. Because this was mine. The paper. The plan. The silence. None of them loud. All of them final. I returned home just before sunset. The kitchen smelled like reheated pasta. Charlene didn't ask where I'd been. She never did. But I smiled anyway. Because I had been somewhere. She hadn't imagined I could still go. Somewhere with doors. I could still open. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a guest. In the life I had built, I felt like the one holding the blueprint. It was Sunday. The kind of day Charlene liked to call reset day. She made waffles, cut fresh strawberries, set the table with cloth napkins. As if routine could make things feel whole. I dressed slowly. Chose the navy sweater Henry once said. Made me look like the head of the table. I hadn't worn it in years. Downstairs, the house smelled like cinnamon and eggs. The kind of warmth you can't trust. If you've been cold for too long. They were all seated when I entered. 3 plates already served. 1 still empty. I took my seat. Charlene smiled like everything was fine. I smiled back. The envelope was in my bag. Unsealed. Unspoken. Just waiting. Lily told a story about a school project. Her father laughed. Charlene refilled juice glasses. No one asked about my week. No one noticed that I had brought the green ceramic mug back from my room. The one with the crack. The one that still held heat. Halfway through the meal, I reached into the bag and placed the envelope beside my plate. I didn't say a word. Charlene glanced at it. Her smile faltered. A flicker. What's that? I wiped my mouth with the napkin. Took a sip of tea. Then looked up. Calm. Clear. It's something I filed last week, I said. Just an update to the deed. Nothing urgent. Just clarity. She blinked. Then laughed. A short, nervous sound. Mom, you didn't have to do that. We were going to handle everything together, remember? Together. I didn't respond. I just slid the envelope across the table. She didn't open it. Not right away. Her husband reached for it. Paused. Looked at her. Lily watched us both. Like it was a game. No one had explained to her. I pushed my plate slightly aside. Folded my hands. And said, very softly, I've already signed. It's legal. Filed. Witnessed. Charlene's smile vanished. Not in anger, but in recognition. The kind that comes when you realize you forgot someone was still capable of action. Still capable of saying no without raising her voice. Charlene's fingers tightened on the envelope. She didn't open it. Not yet. Her husband shifted in his seat, cleared his throat like he might say something, but didn't. I looked at my tea. It had gone lukewarm. Still, I drank it, because I had earned every quiet sip. "What is this, really?" Charlene asked. Her tone had changed. Not sharp, just smaller, as if the ground beneath her had tilted. Without warning. "It's exactly what I said," I replied. "A decision. Signed. Filed. Mine." She opened the flap, slid out the papers. Her eyes scanned quickly. Too quickly to absorb. Just fast enough to look for danger. Then she found it. Page 2. The line where the words, "Irrevocable charitable land transfer," sat quietly, not asking for permission. She looked up. Mouth parted. No sound. Across the table, her husband leaned in. Read the line. Sat back. There was a pause. Not long, but enough. Enough for the air to change. Enough for Lily to stop chewing and glance from one face to the other. "You're giving it away," Charlene finally said. I nodded. One section. The North Field. To the Sustainable Farming Initiative. "But why?" she whispered. "Why now?" I met her eyes. "Because while you were deciding how to split things, I remembered who planted them." She didn't speak. Not right away. I could feel the pulse in the room. Shifting. Realigning. They had never thought I would act. They had counted on my quiet as a form of absence. But I was never absent. Just watching, weighing, waiting. Lily reached for her juice. Knocked over the glass. Orange liquid spilled across the tablecloth, creeping toward the papers. Charlene grabbed a napkin. I did, too. Our hands met at the edge of the mess. Briefly. Gently. Then parted. We cleaned together. Not a word between us. But something had been wiped clean. That had nothing to do with juice. She folded the papers. Placed them back in the envelope. Said nothing. I didn't need her approval. Only her awareness. And now, she had both. That night, no one mentioned the envelope. Dinner plates were rinsed in silence. Charlene loaded the dishwasher. With more care than usual. Like the clatter of ceramic cup might break something deeper. I wiped down the table. She didn't stop me. But for once, she didn't say, "I've got it," either. Progress, perhaps. Later, in the living room, Lily asked if I wanted to play cards. She brought out the worn deck we used to keep at the farmhouse. I sat across from her. Watched her shuffle. The way Henry had taught her. Thumbs pressing. Edges snapping into each other. Like breath, finding breath. We played quietly. She won. Twice. Charlene watched from the kitchen. Not angry. Just distant. As if learning how to see me again took more time than she thought. I didn't offer her a seat. But I left space. Before bed, I checked the drawer where I kept my papers. They were still there. Unmoved. Respected, now. By sheer weight of what they'd survived. I smoothed the top page. The one with Grace's signature. The notary seal pressed clean and permanent. Henry would have smiled. Not because I fought. But because I remembered. That a boundary doesn't have to be a wall. Sometimes, it's just a name. Where it used to be. Before someone else rode over it. I made tea. Carried it upstairs. Stopped halfway. Charlene stood at the foot of the hall. Hands in the pockets of her cardigan. She didn't speak. Just nodded. A slow, unsure nod. But it was something. Not an apology. Not yet. But maybe the silence. Between two people who know they've walked too far. In opposite directions. And aren't sure how to turn back. I said goodnight. She did too. Then I closed my door. set the tea down, and wrote a line in my journal. I didn't raise my voice, but they heard me anyway. I folded the page, tucked it inside the file. Not to hide, just to keep close. What is finally mine again? The new place is quiet, but not the kind of quiet that makes you feel forgotten. This one breathes. Through floorboards that creak with memory. Through windows that let in morning air. Without apology. It's a small rental cottage. On the edge of town. Too far for school drop-offs. Too close to be erased completely. Just right. For now. The porch is narrow, but it fits a chair. A good chair. One that doesn't belong to anyone else's memory. I sit there every morning. With my green mug. The one with the crack. Still holding heat. Birds gather near the feeder I hung last week. Chickadees. 2 cardinals. 1 stubborn squirrel. They all come without needing an invitation. That's something I've started to cherish. The kind of presence that doesn't require permission. Inside, the walls are bare for now. But I've kept a box. Just one. Not of things. Of moments. A photo of Henry in the orchard. Lily's crayon drawing from when she was 5. A crooked tree. A woman in a blue dress. Smiling with both arms raised. She'd written, "Grandma," on the bottom. In uneven letters. I pinned it to the fridge. Not for nostalgia. For truth. Because sometimes, the most fragile drawings are the ones that hold the most permanent names. I have my journal. The green one. The entries are shorter now. Not because I have less to say, but because peace doesn't need much space to grow. I write in the mornings, before the kettle whistles. Simple lines. Today, I hung the feeder. I heard my name in the wind. Grace still calls. Every Thursday. Not for updates. Just to ask, how does the light fall in the kitchen now? And I always tell her. Because some questions are really just forms of love. In disguise. Sometimes, Mr. Todd leaves apples by the gate. No note. Just the fruit. Still warm from his hand. I place them in a bowl. The same blue one Charlene didn't want. The one she said looked too old. Old, yes. But it holds things. Without breaking. Like me. I think of Charlene sometimes. Not with bitterness. But with the ache of 2 women. Born in different storms. She writes now and then. Short messages. Polite. Tentative. I saw a photo of you at the grant announcement. She texted last week. You looked strong. I didn't reply. But I smiled. Because maybe strength isn't always about lifting weight. Sometimes it's about setting it down. At last. Last week, a woman from the farming initiative stopped by. She wore boots still caked in field mud. And carried a clipboard. Like it was a bouquet. I just wanted to say thank you. She said. For the donation. That land. We're going to use it to teach kids how to grow food. To let their hands touch something real. I nodded. Didn't say much. But something inside me. Something I thought had long gone quiet. Stirred. Not pride. Something gentler. Legacy. She walked the perimeter with me. The air smelled like hay and late apples. I showed her the corner where Henry once planted iris bulbs. Just because I said I missed the color purple. She smiled. Jotted it down. Maybe we'll plant more here. She said. Keep the story alive. I let that settle in the air. Like pollen. Not every woman gets to watch something she was pushed out of blossom again. Because she chose not to burn it. On her way out. That evening, I sat on the porch. Held the journal open on my lap. The sky above was a soft gray. The way Henry used to call weathered silk. I wrote. There are kinds of justice that don't need courtrooms. Only continuity. Then I closed the book. Let my hand rest on the cover. Felt the pulse. Of something finished, but never lost. A neighbor passed with her dog. She waved. I waved back. She didn't ask who I was. But I think she saw. Not a woman starting over. But a woman who had re-entered her own life. I think of Lily often. I've sent her postcards. One for each month. Each with a sentence that matters. This tree was planted before your mom was born. This recipe came from my mother's hands. This fence once held in a horse named Maple. I don't know if she reads them. But I write them anyway. Because the stories that survive are the ones we keep telling. Even when no one asks. I've stopped asking to be included. Now, I include myself. In tea. In soil. In paper. And if one day, someone finds this journal and wonders who I was, they'll know. I was not erased. I stepped aside. But I never disappeared. Some women vanish in the noise. Others are written out in the silence. Have you or someone you love ever had to reclaim their story? One page at a time? Share it below. You never know who might find their voice. Because you used yours. Welcome to Kamar FM, where every story is a second chance. If this story held a piece of your heart, consider subscribing for more stories of dignity, healing, and quiet justice. We don't shout here. We remember. Turn on notifications if you want to hear from us. The next time a woman decides to take her story back, you are not alone. You never were.